So with the different market structure spectrums, if we look at perfect competition, we can say, this is what a market looks like if it's competitive. This is what equilibrium looks like. This is what price and quantity look like. This is what a market would look like if it's a monopoly. We could do that. We could say even monopolistic competition, it looks a lot like, it behaves a lot like perfect competition, but there is some market power. But we can say generally monopolistically competitive markets behave this way, and this is what equilibrium would look like. Oligopoly is different. Oligopoly is different because there's just a small number of firms, and there's no magic n that's a small number, but a small number of firms, so not hundreds or thousands. There may be thousands in the market, but there's a small number that actually dominate the market. Like there might be a whole bunch of little cola producers out there, but Coke and Pepsi really dominate the market. That's an oligopoly. And the thing about that is because there's so few firms, you can't actually say this is the way oligopoly behaves. How oligopoly behaves depends on how those few firms decide they want to behave. And so we can't say, here's a picture of how oligopoly behaves. Here's a model of how oligopoly behaves. The key defining characteristic of oligopoly is strategic interdependence. I can't, because there are so few of us, my best choice to make depends on what you do. I can't even tell what my demand curve looks like if I don't know what you're going to do. So let's say I'm a car manufacturer, like I'm making, let's say Honda Accords or something. I'm not sure exactly how much they cost, but I know that's a point on my demand curve because that's where I am now. And I want to know what's going to happen if I drop my price. Let's say I have a $2,000 off cashback rebate thing like they do for cars a lot. If I drop my price by $2,000, how much more am I going to sell? Well, that depends, right? Because the people that are looking for Accords, some people are just going to buy Accords no matter what, but a lot of them are looking for that mid-size sedan sort of thing. And so they'll look at the Accord and they'll look at the Mazda 6 or whatever else is like an Accord, and they'll shop around. So if everything's kind of in the same price point and then Accord drops its price by $2,000, is it going to sell a lot more? Well, if nobody else drops their price, then yeah, not only will some people decide to buy a car who might not have, but if you drop your price $1,000 and no one else follows your price change, you'll probably sell a lot more. Well, I don't know, but if you drop your price, so we'll call that demand curve A, people are going to be pretty responsive because you're the only one lowering your price, so you're going to sell a lot more. Maybe not quite that responsive, but I'm getting carried away there. But if you drop your price and everyone else drops their price too, yeah, some people who weren't going to buy cars will buy cars now, but it's going to be, there's not going to be as much responsiveness for you because you're not going to steal customers away from all those other mid-size sedans, right? So your demand curve could look like A or B, and it's the same thing if you raise your price. If you raise your price and no one follows you, you're going to lose a lot more customers, right? Because they'll just go buy those other mid-size sedans. If no one copies your price increase, people are going to leave. If you raise your price and everyone follows you, everyone else raises their price also, then yeah, you'll all lose some customers, but not that many. So if no one follows your price change, demand's going to be more, what do we call it when the demand curve's flatter? Demand's going to be more elastic, more responsive, right? Because if nobody else is changing their price, you lower your price, you're going to attract a lot more customers away from those other people. You raise your price, you're going to lose a lot more customers to those people. But if everyone follows your price change, then your demand won't be as elastic. The price of all mid-size sedans is higher, or the price of all mid-size sedans is lower. So there will be some responsiveness, but not enough. But the key point here is that you don't know, in the absence of knowing how your competitors are going to behave, you don't even know what your demand curve looks like. It could look like the blue demand curve, it could look like the pink demand curve, or it could be, and this is actually kind of what the auto industry is like, is that if you cut your price, if you do the $2,000 cashback rebate, almost everyone's going to follow you. So if you cut your price, you're not going to attract that many more customers because everyone's going to copy you. But if you raise your price, very often people don't follow you. And so This is sometimes called, well, it is called the kink demand curve model of oligopoly. It's not that important except to illustrate that that's one way oligopoly could behave. And that's a pretty good model of how the auto industry behaves. And this is why prices are so stable. You don't want to raise your price because no one will follow you and you'll lose too many customers. So you'll lose revenue. You raise your price, you sell so much less, you lose revenue. You don't want to lower your price because everyone's going to copy you, and then you're just selling slightly more at a lower price and you're going to lose revenue. Demand is inelastic to price increases and elastic to price decreases. You're going to lose money no matter what you do. And so prices in the auto industry stay fairly stable. The importance of that is not that that's a broadly applicable thing, but that's just one model. That's how one oligopoly may work. Every oligopolies could run the range, an entire range of behavior from total collusion all the way down to cutthroat competition and everywhere in between. There's no one way that an oligopoly might behave. You know, if an oligopoly is made and it's two firms and that the two people happen to know each other in college and hate each other, they may be very, very competitive and keep trying to run each other out of business. They knew each other in college and they really liked each other, they may be really collusive. And it is, you know, there's a legal line. So you can be colluding on one side of legal where you're doing it quietly, sometimes called tacit collusion, where you're colluding but not talking about it. Like price leadership. If I raise my price, you raise your price, but we don't talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, they can't arrest us because they can't prove anything. It's just what we do. Breakfast cereal industry does that. Cigarette industry does that. Airlines sometimes do that when they're colluding, and then sometimes they just turn around and they're just, airlines move up and down the spectrum with regularity on how they behave. On the other side of legal, of course, are cartels, which is where firms actually explicitly get together and say, let's act like a monopoly. Let's keep our output low. Let's keep our price high. Let's extract all the profit we can from the market. If you get together and talk about it, that's illegal. In the US, in the European Union, a lot of places. Not everywhere, because OPEC, the oil organization, is a cartel. But so you can, in the US, you can't overtly get together and say, let's raise our prices, let's keep our output low so we can charge really high prices. That's not allowed. But a lot of industries, you might see firms, you know, being kind of nice to each other, not being very competitive. Let's all just agree quietly without saying so to keep our output low, keep our prices high. But then markets could get more and more competitive. And if you get really competitive, like to the non-legal side of competitive, there's a lot of things you could do, but so you could drop your price to try to steal customers and things like that. But there's a point at which if you drop your price so low that you're losing money just to drive other competitors out of the market, like you're a big airline and the small airline jumps in and tries to take your route from LA to San Francisco, say, it's a profitable route, and a small airline just wants to do that, and they're charging a real low, like $59 fare, you just charge $39, lose money on it, because you're a huge airline, you can make that up other places, lose money on that route as long as you have to until you drive the other airline out of business. That's illegal. But again, it's just on the other side, so it's hard to prove always. But the point here is that oligopoly could look like any of these things. Oligopoly can behave anyway. That's just a few number of firms. But the one thing that is true for all oligopolies is this strategic interdependence. That my best behavior, what's best for me to do, and the outcome, the payoff to me for doing whatever I choose to do, depends on what you do. And that's why, as we'll see going forward, we don't have one picture that's oligopoly. We can't say this is how oligopoly behaves, but we use game theory to analyze oligopoly. Game theory it's a framework. It's an analytical framework for understanding strategic behavior. And it's what we use in economics now to analyze, because we can use the same analytical framework, the game theoretic structure, to talk about all different kinds of behavior. And so it makes it useful because the key thing is that it's a strategic interaction. like any game, like chess, like anything. Oligopoly is like that. What I do and the outcome from what I do depends on what you choose to do.